Alright guys, we're back today. We are going to take a look at the brush hog. As some of you pointed out in my videos, the brush hog is not very well level in either direction. If you take a look here, the front corner is touching. Got a large gap in the rear. If we take a look at this side, I guess it's pretty similar. The front is touching, but there's a large gap in the back. There's also a few spots here. We might re-weld those while we're in the garage. But one of the main things to adjust this is these linkages, and as you can see, they actually move freely. They just have nylock nuts on them. So I was hoping to get this all where I wanted it, pretty much perpendicular to the mower deck itself, and I got a bunch of new lock washers. We're going to change the hardware on those to get them to stiffen up and stay rigid. Then we can adjust our third member and make any other necessary repairs. I bought this brush hog probably in 2016. It wasn't until I think 2 seasons ago that I finally put some marks in the brush hog, so it's held up pretty well. But at this point, I do want to take the time to look at the blades. I know they're not supposed to be razor sharp because it's not a finish mower, but I'm sure there's chunks out of them at this point because of the rocks that I've hit in the past. So we'll get you guys propped up here and we'll detach it from the tractor, I think temporarily, and get these hardware replaced and go from there. All right, now we'll adjust the third member to see if we can get this front of the deck to come up and level out going straight back. Ah! Yeah. So, as I did that, you can see it just collapsed on itself again. So I'm gonna have to do something different in this area. The lock washer just on the outside is not cutting it. So I might have to put spacers or something in there to take up the slack so this actually pinches it all together. That'd be why the lock washer's not working, because it's broken. Pretty stout. We're moving the whole brush hog. Wow! You almost got her though. I'd say it's pretty good. Pretty good, like. Probably scratching the heck out of the floor. It could go a little bit more. You know? Ain't the end of the world. A lot better than what it was. It ain't straight by any means, but it ain't caved in as bad as it looks on camera. You gotta figure out all this stuff down here next. I did get these blades dusted up. They are not perfect by any means, especially considering this one has a chunk out of the end of it, but they're a lot better than what they were. They're no longer curled up. So at this point, I can probably lay the brush hog back down and we can work on this mechanism here. What happened yesterday, we were working on it. Inside here, there's an inner sleeve where the bolt goes through, and then there's an outer sleeve that kind of spaces these bars apart from one another. Problem is the outer sleeve seems to be slightly too long, which ends up not allowing you to tighten it enough to keep this whole mechanism from rotating. Now, in the sense of disassembling or needing to move this and collapsing that makes sense, but in the sense of trying to level your deck and keep everything from just folding in on itself, it doesn't make any sense. So I'm gonna try to do something with some bolts and some washers. If that doesn't work, I'm honestly just going to probably get it to the position I want and weld it, because I've owned this brush hog now since 2016. It's 2024, and I have never once collapsed it. I've never tried to take off that stuff to make the items smaller. I'll probably never get rid of it unless I end up getting to a bigger tractor, which as it is, I could always probably use a 6-footer behind this anyway. But regardless, it needs to be rigid so I can level the deck. So let's see what we can do with it. All right, not as weak as I thought I was. There we go. Now she's solid. Alright, so just to show you guys what's going on here, this spacer that goes inside the arm, goes up to the third member, is too thick, meaning it's wider than the thickness of this plate steel. Now, if you wanted this mechanism up here to move, that's exactly how it should be. But we don't want it to move. We don't want it to collapse. We want it to stay rigid. So that's why we are taking this and grinding it a little bit thinner so it gets sandwiched in between there and we can actually tighten down the pieces of metal to one another. And it'll keep it rigid so we can adjust our mower deck to the right height. Perfect. Now, we have to do that all over again. We have to do it for this linkage up here. So, these longer spacers. All right. We got that all back together. Everything is tight. This is rigid. No more flexing, no more collapsing. I promise you guys right now though, if I do see this collapsing or having another problem, I'll put it right back in this position, make sure everything's tight, and I will weld it in place. And that is because some of these come fixed. Some of them come where you don't bolt them together. Obviously, this is probably a little bit more of a cheaper line. So it comes where you can take it apart. And I don't need it flexing on me. I don't need it dipping up and down. It's gonna stay rigid, and if the bolts don't do it, the weld beads will. So, all right, let's get this hooked up back to the machine. Let's try to make our adjustments with our third member and see what we get. It's all hooked up. So basically what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna put a bar through here and I'm going to extend it. Extending it should bring the front up. If we were to shorten it, it's gonna bring the back up. So let's extend it, and I may have to turn on the tractor for a second to get the hydraulics for the 3-point hitch working. It seems like they kind of sag down overnight, so let's do that quick and be right back with you. All right. All right, so the back is currently up 2 3/4 of an inch. So we need to raise this up till we get there. As you can tell, we got a long ways to go. So let's get started. Thinking maybe we need spacers in there too to kind of keep that centered. Never really thought about that. I just kind of slapped that on there years ago. I know you can also adjust this arm to try to level things out, so maybe that's what I got to do next. We'll take a rough measurement and see how far off it is. Yeah, so this could definitely be shortened up some. Look at that, there's grease fittings on it. So it looks like right now we want to raise this side. Now, let's see. Maybe I want a little too much. Yeah, look at that. That is good right there. Okay, so that's leveled up that way. Now, let's come back here and look at the deck to the ground. Let me get you closer. 2 5/8, and that's 2 3/4. So, bring up the front a little bit more. All right, we got our top member all adjusted now. There is a little bit of play side to side still. It looks like there's a little bit of slop in the linkages. So it's not going to be perfect, but I will say this is going to be way better than what it was before. As one of the viewers pointed out, I definitely didn't have it leveled or adjusted. And I guess the main reasoning was because of all this hardware and it not being able to clamp it tight and hold it rigid. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to remove the brush hog from the tractor. As you guys may have noticed, There's some TLC that's needed up here. Get this chain hook back up, get that retainer back in. We're gonna have to check the fluids because it looks like it's been leaking out the PTO shaft now since that's been unbolted. Once we do that, we're probably gonna come back to the brush hog. I'm thinking that we're gonna try to weld some of these cut marks up just so we keep the grass from coming out of the top of the deck. And after that, we may even dive in and replace the valve cover gasket, take the tank off, clean some things up on the tractor. It's been cutting in and out really bad. I've cleaned the carb multiple times and it still doesn't seem to help. So I think at this point it's something that's getting clogged in the tank. Or it could be, I think there's supposed to be, I mean, I know there's a heat shield between the tank and the manifold here. But I'm wondering if there's supposed to be a heat shield under here, because I know the carburetor gets really hot, and I know people say that you could almost be like boiling the gas before it gets to the carb. So I don't know, but we'll have to try to take a look at it, see if we find debris in the tank or whatnot, and go from there. So let's get this removed and see what we got to do back there by the PTO shaft. Alright, I took a look in there and it looks like all the threads are fine, so the bolt must have just simply vibrated out, which is a good possibility because I noticed none of these bolts have lock washers on them. So, I don't know what this bolt's for. Maybe these are supposed to be hooked down here. Who knows? So I'm going to give this a tap back. We might chase the threads in there before we put in any new hardware. Wow, that was bad. That's actually really bad. The whole thing was coming out, like, real bad. Yikes. Alright. It's probably like a 3/8. I need to get that tucked back in first. Well, I'm glad I took a look at that. Holy cow. I'm gonna go with, these are supposed to be down here. And since this one's broken off, they moved them up. So to be at the same spot. But this is trash. However, I guess, yeah, that is larger than 3/8. So I'll need 2 of these bolts, and I'll need another bolt for down here. So maybe I should try getting that out before I go buying hardware. Looks like somebody tried getting this out once before. So that's why you use left-handed drill bits when removing a bolt, because look at it. It just came out by itself. It caught and came out. Sweet. Alright, so the store had 2 options. 1.25" with a flange and 1 inch long, but these are just like grade 3 hardware, nothing crazy. Not super crazy about using these guys, but I guess if it's just to retain this ring, then there shouldn't be a problem. I'll probably use one of the higher grade bolts from here for fastening this on. Looks like I should probably get a washer on there because that hole is pretty reamed out. Let's see if these tighten down. That one tightened down. Cool. Those are in there. Alright, so that's not going to work because inch and a quarter is too long. That is why I did buy 3 of these, just in case. Wow. I really don't like how that crush washer is doing that. All right, well, new hardware is in, and I think that's a wrap on that. I did get these collar ends, or whatever they call them, here while I was at the store. So I'm gonna tighten those down to keep this more centered. I know the whole pin itself could still move some, but once there's pressure on it, I think it's gonna kind of stay pretty true. And it won't be able to move that far with those locked down on it. All right, we got it welded up. Like I said, it's not the prettiest welds. Probably could have done better if I actually prepped the material and took the time to get it right. I was just mainly trying to get it welded up so the grass would stop popping up through it. So at this point, we have it welded up. We just need to throw the PTO shaft on. The deck seems to be pretty level. We've replaced the hardware down there. We hook our chain back up. A couple things that I did to the tractor off camera. I did end up investigating. The tractor seems to cut out after brush hogging for a little while. I was suspecting that it was getting too hot. And so I had put in a new temperature gauge a long time ago, and I was never able to hook it up because the old thermocouple was actually stuck inside here. So I ended up pulling off the radiator, pulling off the filler neck there, taking out the thermostat, pushing the old one out, getting the new one hooked up. While I did that, I did double check on the water pump. The water pump seems to be fine. All the fins are there. that's still working freely. And then one other thing that I did was I did end up adjusting the governor. Now, when I went to adjust the governor, this whole mechanism broke, so I had to make a new one. Went and got 3/8 or a 1/4 inch rod, threaded it, salvaged the old clevis hook, and then the clamp or the bracket that holds the alternator on, this was actually meant for a generator, so it needed to be modified so the governor doesn't interfere with it. So I ended up doing that modification. It's probably really hard to see. Basically just welded on a spacer plate to offset it. Got that all adjusted in, so the tractor does seem to be idling a lot lower, and it seems to be working better throughout the whole RPM range. It doesn't sound like it's taking off like a airplane anymore, which I know some of you made comments saying that I needed to get that adjusted because it was going to cause damage. So kudos to you guys. You were definitely right. It was definitely way out of adjustment. You'll also notice I have an alignment pin in here right now. I got a little excited, took the tractor for a test drive before I put the hood on, forgot the bolts were sitting on the front axle. I managed to find one of them in my test drive, but I have completely lost the second one. So I will have to order new ones of those, or at least a new one of them. The scary part is I took it for a test drive on the driveway, and I don't know if you've ever seen those bolts before, but the end of them come to a complete point, almost like an alignment pin. So there's a chance if I don't find it, and it is in the driveway, we're gonna find it in somebody's tire. And I really don't feel like paying for new tires because they are not cheap. So, all right, let me get this propped up. I think the only thing left to do is take it for a test drive and see how well she brush hogs. Really happy with the way it's cutting. It's definitely a lot more leveled cut. I did sharpen up the blades while I was in there, so it's cutting through this thin wispy grass pretty easily. One thing I'm noticing, the carb definitely seems like she needs an adjustment. It sounds like it's kind of cutting in and out. So I gotta mess with that a little bit. But I think once I get that part figured out, then we'll have a good solid tractor ready to run, and we'll get you guys some more brush hogging videos. I noticed you guys are really enjoying the one that I put out, and I know I got some feedback on what not to do for the next one. So I'll get this fixed up, and we'll get to brush hogging fields so you guys can watch. Thanks again for supporting. If you could do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. It really helps out the channel. Really striving to hit the 1,000 subscribers this year. And with your help, I can do that. So thanks again. We'll see you in the next video.